Howdy, this is Mackenzie Franklin from SideGame LLC here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Today we're going to be doing our top 10 more I Need It board games. This is actually a continuation of an older video that I did on the channel, the top 10 I Need It board games. These are games that I have never heard about or maybe have heard a little bit about and played a friend's copy, and after playing that copy I thought to myself, wow, I need this board game. And you'll see it as we go through the list here. I'll explain when I found out about them and what drew me to them and why they're now a part of our library. With that being said, if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please make sure that you do. It is the best way to help us grow. And for those of you already subscribed, thank you so much for the continuous support. Let's talk about 10 more I Need It board games. Before we begin, I have one honorable mention, and that is for the Unmatched series. This is in particular is Unmatched Battle of Legends Volume 2. Now, the reason it didn't make the list is because I actually bought this game. It's one that I had heard some positives about, but I had not very many opportunities to play two-player games before. However, some opportunities have arisen. I've had a lot of chances to play two-player, so I figured I'd give this one a try. And wow, I am stunned. This is a 10 out of 10 game for me. I love the simplicity of the game system and the variability that's going to be coming from the different card decks and how the complexity comes from those cards, but you're getting them only a piece at a time while the core mechanisms are so simple and straightforward. So impressed with this system, and we are all in at this point. The entire Unmatched collection is in our library now, and I just want to play more of this. This is my game that I just want to play all the time, so trying to get to that two-player count so I could just play more Unmatched. So didn't quite make the list here, but Unmatched Battle of Legends Volume 2 in particular, amazing first impression, and the rest of the series so far has not disappointed. So that's my honorable mention, Unmatched. My number 10 goes to Imperial Settlers Empires of the North, where you play as asymmetric factions who are trying to build out your empire by playing these different cards in front of you, using their abilities and going out to explore islands, as well as using action pawns to collect resources, draw cards, and increase your population to be able to use more abilities throughout the course of the game. My favorite thing about Empires of the North is the way the island exploration works. You have different characters with their own asymmetric decks, but there's also this central area of islands that you can send out to explore. If you put fish on your boats that you send out, they can travel further, and then if you put these raise tokens on them, they can actually bring back those islands as more cards for your empire and become new abilities that you can exhaust and untap. I love that this allows you to customize your asymmetric faction outside of its starting deck, but you still have that solid core strategy that comes with your prepackaged cards. The first time I played this was when I was visiting my older brother. It was in the back of my head as something that I wanted to get, but as soon as I heard that it had an amazing solo mode, it's one that I pulled the trigger on, and I was not disappointed. The solo mode is wonderful. I love the different scenario structure, as well as the addition of new factions in the expansion sets. I also love that new islands are introduced in each expansion set as well, so even if you're playing some of those core game factions, you may still be affected by the different islands that show up throughout the course of the game. So that is my number 10, Imperial Settlers Empires of the North. My number 9 goes to Mysterium Park, a simplified version of the original Mysterium, a cooperative game where one player plays as a ghost, and they'll be using these vision cards to try to get the other players, the psychics, to guess either a location or a suspect of some sort. Once they've done this in a certain number of rounds, they've won the game, but all players at the table must do this and finish with the finale round. Now, the reason this game is on this list is because it took me a while to actually play it, because I was a bit apprehensive about it. I really enjoy the original Mysterium and the way that all of the items are set out at the beginning, the murder weapon, the location of the suspect, because players can be playing on different tiers at different points in the game and consistently be engaged in their own guesswork. And it puts a little bit of pressure on the ghost with how they give up the clues and who they prioritize. I really enjoyed this. Now, that being said, I think that this does a great job for one specific reason, and it's the reason it's in our library, and that is because it reduces the setup time. In the original Mysterium, you had to set up all of these different cards in the game and then shuffle up these decks, put them out on your own player board behind you. In this game, it's not the case. You simply put out all the suspects or the locations and then draw a single card and you are ready to go. It's that easy. And this is a huge facilitation for speed of gameplay, and this means that Mysterium Park can be a game that you bring out after you play a game that does have a bit more of an involved setup. You can play one large game, and then after you put it away, you simply pull out Mysterium Park to close out the night. I remember the first time I played this game. My friend Fun taught it to me and my wife Ariana, and we both looked at each other and thought, okay, this has to go in the library. library. Now, I do prefer the original Mysterium over this game. I think that the theme is more open and allows you to do more things with the different characters. There's also a lot more variety in the different characters and with the expansions, the motives. So there's just a lot more choice, and you're not going to see the same thing every time. Whereas if you play Mysterium Park a couple of times, you're going to start seeing some recurring characters and some recurring clue cards. But I do think that this has a purpose for our library, and that is that perfect closer for a game night as a simple way to play the Mysterium experience in a smaller package. So that is my number 9, Mysterium Park. My number 8 goes to Blood Bowl Team Manager, the card game. This has you playing fantasy football. You are the manager of these crazy fantasy teams in the 40K universe. You'll be using your different members of your team, playing them out onto these different battlefield areas, these highlights, and then if you win these highlights, you're going to gain rewards. Even if you lose the highlights, you'll still gain rewards, but you'll get an additional bonus if you do win them. I love the way that you're playing cards into the different areas. My favorite part about the game are the legibility and the icons on the cards. When you play a card, you have these icons that are listed, and you just follow the line. If it's got a tackle symbol, you tackle. If it's got a cheat token, you grab a cheat token. If it's got the ball, you get the ball. It's so easy to read them and play them, and you can get anybody up and running because all of these text on the cards is explanatory and very helpful for actually getting you to play the game. You'll have keywords that appear on cards, but after each keyword, an explanation of what that does. So when you're starting to learn, it's easy to read and get into, and once you've played a lot, you can look at a keyword and understand what it does immediately. I love how it plays. I love that you're playing one card at a time into multiple battlefields, and I love how you're having to split your resources and trying your best to win a variety of different things. Great effects, powers, and abilities, and asymmetry, and a universe I love, and the expansions are wonderful with all of the new factions that they bring in. I was first introduced to this game by my friend Dan. Now, he and my other friend Wade have introduced me to a lot of older games because I have not been in this hobby for particularly long. I've only been here about 6 years now. But that being said, I've been able to try a lot of these older games with Dan and Wade. And Dan brought this one night and I instantly fell in love. However, this game is out of print, so it was very hard to find. But luckily, my friends Jeff and Jenna were able to find a copy of the base game for me at a ridiculously low price at one of the garage sales that they had at one of the local game stores. So I was able to get that and then paid a little bit more for the expansion content, but was finally able to add this one into our library, and I'm so excited to continue playing it. This is a great experience, a wonderful theme, and the flavor text on the cards and the legibility means that it's going to be something that people can pick up and enjoy straight from turn 1. I really like Blood Bowl Team Manager, and you'll probably see some more of these games from my experiences with Dan and Wade as we go further down the list. Speaking of another Dan and Wade game, my number 7 goes to Glory to Rome. In this one, you play as patricians trying to create a variety of buildings, as well as gain the most influence and sell the most goods, and try to build a variety of card combos in the city of Rome. Glory to Rome's action structure is very straightforward, as you play a card and perform the action on that card. But my favorite thing about the game is the following system. Once you do something on your turn, every other player at the table has the option to either follow by playing a copy of the same card and then performing that action as well, or they can decide to think, which means they draw up to their hand size, or get a wild card, or just draw a card from the top of the deck. I love this because players have the options to do a lot on every turn, and it feels so good when you're able to efficiently follow and then draw back up to a fresh hand of cards and continue playing different cards. I also love that you can hire clientele into this extra area down here, and this will provide you with bonus actions, so even when you are doing a think action to draw cards on an opponent's turn, you can still follow with these clienteles and draw and then build or do whatever with even more options because of your fresh new hand. Every single turn feels powerful in Glory to Rome, and the cards themselves feel strong as well, and you'll be playing a lot of them throughout the course of the game. On my first play of Glory to Rome, I got introduced to the system and I really loved it. I was getting into the swing of the things, but Wade played a card that instantly ended the game after it was constructed, and it was really frustrating because I wanted to play it more, which is awesome. That's a great experience to have. I didn't actually get a copy of the game though until I played it a second time and got to see the entire arc of the game with that instant end game condition card aside. And I really enjoy the overall experience, the pacing, and the consistent powerful actions that you get to take. So very happy that I got to play this one, and we're very lucky to have found a copy to put into the library, and it even included the expansion, which is a great change of pace with the amount of different resources that are going to be available in the center because it reduces the amount of cards required in order to make wilds. I love this game, I love this experience, and I think it's a wonderful wonderful engine builder that you need to give a try. So that is my number 7, Glory to Rome. Continuing on the Wade and Dan train, this is number 6, Survive Escape from Atlantis, where you are trying to escape Atlantis. Atlantis is sinking, and it's up to you to bring all of your different colored meeples off of the island. You're going to be moving them around one at a time, putting them on boats, and evading different sea creatures. The turn structure is very easy. On your turn, you get a couple of movements, and then you'll remove one of the tiles from the board, and then you'll roll the monster die, and one of the monsters on the board will move. If it's a shark, it eats swimmers. If it's a sea creature, it'll destroy whatever it touches. If it's a whale, it destroys the boats. This is a take that game to its core because you are trying your best to sink and eat all of your opponent's characters. I love this system, and my favorite part of this game is actually the boats. Boats are these brown pieces here, and you can actually put the meeples into the boats. And when you do so, whoever's in that boat can move it. This adds a weird layer of cooperation to the game where everything else around it is take that. And I love this concept because it's going to have players forming unlikely alliances to get their different characters out of the game. Because once you do, that character is safe and you'll actually score its point at the end game. I love the accessibility of the game, and I find it extremely cool that when you begin the game, you're sort of making a social contract with everybody at the table that we will be dunking on each other this whole game. It is the point of the experience after all. So that is my number 6, Survive Escape from Atlantis. My number 5 goes to Knit Wit, a competitive game where you're going to be creating Venn diagrams using string. And based on where those Venn diagrams land, that's going to give you criteria for different words that you're going to have to come up with. This is very similar to games like Categories, where you're trying to come up with unique words, but if you have a cross between any of the other players, your 2 words are canceled out and neither of you score points. So you're trying to be creative, but also trying to get an answer that fits the established criteria. The reason I love this game is the overall arc of the experience. In the first half of the game, you're going to be putting out the spools and the strings as well as the tags, and then the second half, that's when you're actually going to write name in order to match the criteria of the spools. But in that first half of the game, you're just simply placing out a string, attaching a tag, and then placing a spool into the area of the string you just placed. And you'll do this for each string, each spool, each tag. And I love how each player is able to figure out where they want to put these different things to increase or decrease the difficulty of each spool. This is such a strange concept to describe over the internet like this, but imagine that you're placing this 7 spool here. In a future turn, whoever is placing the 8 string can make it so that their string overlaps that spool and now changes the conditions of that word. Now you have to figure out what this means when it comes to uncommon, harmful, and mythical, because this 7 spool is inside of all of those different strings. I love this concept, and I love how it's up to the players to create these strange situations which will lead to interesting responses during the second half of the game. Now this game and the next one were both introduced to me by my friends Regan and Kayla. They're very into these word-style party games, and this one did not disappoint. Another reason I really enjoyed this was the teaching experience for this was wonderful. They were able to set up the game, and we just learned it as we were playing it. They explained how the spools worked when we placed the spools, we explained the different adjectives and how they clipped, and then when it came to the real-time portion where we had to correctly write the words for these different categories, we understood the implications of what we have done. Such a great game, such a great concept. This is Knit Wit, my number 5. My number 4 goes to Phantom Inc., and this is another word game that I played with Regan and Kayla. Now, this game has a similar premise to something like Mysterium, but instead of having one person who is the ghost, there are multiple ghosts because this is a team-based game. This has you, as the mediums, trying to ask questions to a ghost player in order to figure out a specific object. However, this is a competitive race, as you're trying to guess this object before the other players without giving too much information. The ghost and the mediums are able to control the information that they give and the rate at which they give that information. The core concept of the game is this one letter at a time experience. The medium players are going to be giving question cards in their hand to the ghost player, and then the ghost is going to answer that question one letter at a time. It's up to the mediums to tell them when to stop. And once they do, they are going to be guessing one letter at a time until the ghost says stop when they get something incorrect. This is such a cool system because you're able to see the progression of the questions and try to piece together what was potentially asked and what was potentially answered based on the letters that appear in the responses. And all of the responses are logged on this large pad of paper, and so you can clearly clearly go back and see what's going on with the different players. There's a unspoken communication between the different players, and my favorite part about this game is the way that the medium players ask questions to the ghost. They have a hand of cards that they can use to ask, and they give a couple at a time, but the ghost is going to decide which one they want to answer, and this is almost as important as the question that they decided not to answer, because they figured that the other one would give more useful information for the current situation. So it's up to the players to understand the clues from each action that ghost takes. Phantom Ink surprised me with its ease of play and its low rules overhead, but also the click that occurs when you and your ghost have that moment of unspoken communication. I love Phantom Ink, and if you have a group of at least 4, it is one that I strongly recommend for a word-based party experience. It's my number 4, Phantom Ink. My number 3 goes to Ka Ching, a simple game of buying and selling stocks. Now, in the game, you'll have these 5 columns that are available to you, and you could buy whatever's on the top. The game is over when 3 columns disappear. If you want to buy a stock, you pay its cost in cash. And if you want to sell stocks, you take 2 same-colored stocks and multiply their values. If you want this 3, it's going to cost you $3, but if you want to sell these 2 3s, it would be $9 you'd get back, 3 times 3. And that's it. You know the game. This game's overhead for rules is so simple, with such an ease of gameplay and simple choices, but huge impacts on the implications of those choices. You're going to be exposing the cards underneath, you're going to be setting up combos and plays, and you're going to be trying to time it all correctly so you're able to sell the majority of cards in your hand before that endgame trigger happens. Are you going to get caught with not enough money to buy expensive stocks, or are you going to be forced to sell stocks for low values just because you need to extend your plays? There's such a low rules overhead, but an amazing sense of tension throughout the experience. I was introduced to this game by my friend Dan when it was just a 2-player game night. He pulled it out and I saw that it was a game right game, and I thought, okay, this would be a nice, simple, light card game, should be fun. I was so impressed. It was so easy to learn, everything was so intuitive, and I had such a great time. The decisions were impactful and fun. I loved this experience so much. And Dan thought that I was joking the entire time as I'm making these plays and doing the different cards, and I was so thrilled, and he really thought that I was pulling his leg. But Ka Ching is wonderful. It's one of my favorite games, and it belongs in your collection if you're looking for something that gives an impactful drafting experience like Seven Wonders Duel with the rules overhead that can be taught in 30 seconds. Small package. I love Ka Ching. That is my number 3. And my number 2 goes to El Grande, where you're going to be sending out your caballeros into different provinces in Spain and trying to score the most points at the end of each round by having the most majority in each of those regions. You'll score them one at a time, and at the end of 3 rounds, whoever has the most victory points wins. El Grande has a lot of smart, streamlined mechanisms, from its initiative system, where the higher you go, the less troops that you have available to you, and its action cards paired to different effects, as well as the amount of troops you're actually allowed to summon. But my favorite mechanism has to be the Castillo. So the Castillo is this large piece here, and whenever you're allowed to summon troops, you can instead put them into the Castillo. At the end of each of the scoring rounds, you're going to actually score the Castillo as its own separate province, and then on your secret wheel here, you're going to choose one of the other provinces on the board and send all of your units in the Castillo to that province. I love this, as there's going to be some hidden information, so you're never sure what is actually going to happen at the end of each round. This is a wonderful injection of prediction, and I think this makes the whole entire experience sing. And I love the way that some of the action cards use that prediction aspect of the wheel as well. Now, I had originally been recommended this game from my friend Dan over at Chairman of the Board. Make sure to go check out his channel, because he specializes in taking a look at some of these older classic Euro games. And El Grande is one of his only games that he ranks a 10 out of 10, and I can see why. This definitely deserved a spot in our collection, and luckily my friend Wade had a copy of it, so I was able to give it a try before I went out and searched and found a big box version. I know Dan says that the game is perfect without any of the expansion content, but I've been slowly working my way through it bit by bit, and I'm excited to start using some of the new map extensions as well as some of the new action cards that are provided in the game. El Grande is a perfect example of a streamlined, smart experience that deserves its place in the higher rankings in our board gaming hobby. But my number 1 goes to Coloretto, a game of set collection, pile drafting, and push your luck, all with a theme of colorful chameleons. In Coloretto, you're going to be given the choice on each of your turns to either take a pile of chameleons or draw a card from the top of the deck and place it into one of the piles. So each pile can have 3 cards, so are you going to drop out early to get the pile you want, or are you going to try to find a specific chameleon you may need? But then it's up to you, where do you actually put it? Which stack is it going to go into? There are wild chameleons, there are different extra bonus points that you can find as well, but ultimately at the end of the game, you're going to be scoring your 3 sets of chameleons that are the biggest, but everything else is going to be negative points. So it's up to you to juggle the different colors of chameleons and try to determine when is the best time to collect and when is the best time to draw just one more card. Coloretto's brilliance is in its players' agency. Every time you make a decision to put more information out on the board, everybody else has first grabs at that information. And I love how simple and straightforward the set collection aspect is, but how tense the decisions can be, where you're putting the different cards and which cards you decide to collect. And the thing that pushed it up to that 10 category for me are actually the 2 expansions. There are 2 mini bonus card expansions that will change very small rules in the game. And in a game that's this simple, small rule changes are going to give you the variety and spice that you need to get it played again and again and again. It was an extremely amazing game before you even touched these. And these bonus cards can do things like now you only score your 2 largest sets, which floods the game with so many more negative points than you ever could expect. So maybe pulling back early is a much better strategy. Sometimes it'll make it so the wild cards are worth negatives, or the +2s go to the player to your left, and so you're wondering, is it worth it to take this pile because I know that I'm going to be giving the other player some points? It's better to just draw out early, or is it better to keep going? I love how you can set yourself up for successes based on the different players around you, and it's just going to up that interaction in this awesome simplified experience. If you haven't gotten a copy of Coloretto yet, it just came back into print a little while ago, so there are copies available now. I'll leave a link in the description below. Now, the first time I played this game was actually with my friend Dan again. He has been the culprit for a lot of games on this list, as you can see, and we played it initially just 2-player, and I loved it. 2-player actually adds a new set of cards, so the piles will actually have different amounts of cards in them, one with 3, one with 2, one with 1, as opposed to the multiplayer game where they're all just piles of 3. And I love this interesting dynamic that has changed with that 2-player version. Dan had played a lot of Coloretto with his wife, and this was very meaningful for him, and he was excited to share it with me. And I'm so happy that it was a wonderful experience, and it was an insta-get for the library. I had to hunt down a copy of this, and I actually had to get a copy while it was out of print. So I paid a bit of a premium, but I was able to get those bonus cards and the extra promos, and it was well worth it. Coloretto is the perfect set collection filler game, and that's my number 1. I need it board game. And that's the list. Those are 10 more I Need It board games. What are your I Need It board games? What game did you play for the first time that you had never heard about or were a little apprehensive about that you thought to yourself afterwards, oh my gosh, I need it? And were you able to find it? Did you run into any of the issues I had where the games were out of print? I'd love to hear what you think. Do you agree with any of my choices? Do you disagree? Let me know what you think about these games. But thank you so much for watching SideGame Strong.